The more hits we play, the more hits we get. URLradio.net. Stacy Stern.
Michael Cashy.
Okay, we were talking about the unintended consequences of Prohibition. Things did not go as they'd hoped.
Oh, I thought we were talking about how music and lyrics is the greatest movie ever.
Oh, it's the greatest movie ever.
You're right. That's
Top 10.
That's America's Sweethearts.
Top 10. You know what? Here's the thing, though. If you look at rom-coms, some of the best rom-coms ever made, who do they star?
Either Hugh Grant or John Cusack.
Or Drew Barrymore. And this had the two. It had the two. Yeah. It was amazing.
50 First Dates. Such a good one.
Oh, I cry whenever I watch that one.
I cry when I think of you.
Because I'm poking your eyes with a stick.
John Cusack, though.
And I put a pillow over your face when you sleep.
He's in, like, all the breakup movies.
He is. He has to break up in a movie. Well, okay, all the rom-coms you have to break up.
No. They're breakup movies. Like, say anything you watch after a breakup. Better Off Dead you watch after a Christmas breakup.
High Fidelity.
High Fidelity is about
the
breaking up.
Ultimate breakup movie. Yeah, it's great. I actually watched High Fidelity 4 times in the past couple weeks now. Because it's been on HBO and I can't say no. Jack Black was magical in that role. Nobody really knew who he was yet. But he was amazing.
Such a douche.
I know. God, it was great. Anyway. Prohibition. And we're talking about the unintended consequences of Prohibition.
I want to hang out with Hugh Grant.
He'd be great for a group. John Cusack, I think, would just be too intense. Him and Judd Nelson. We had this talk about Judd Nelson, too. They are two of the same people. They're very, kind of psychotic, edgy, ready to crack at any time. I think they're just too intense. They'd be too high energy for the group. And not in a good way. Not like the happy puppy.
Well, yeah, that's Gary Busey.
Yeah.
Gary Busey is in the group.
Oh, my God.
And his
Can you imagine a night drinking?
I would hang out with Jake Busey, too.
Can you imagine a night out drinking with Gary Busey?
No.
Cam, Steen, you, me. We'll throw in Hugh Grant.
Mark Wahlberg. I want Mark Wahlberg in the group.
I love it because he's so intense.
But
that's another one of my other favorite movies is The Other Guys. God, I just love him in that. Terry is amazing. Anyway, unintended consequences of Prohibition. Maybe I should just pick those topics and just talk about movies. Coming in at number 5, unsafe homemade alcohol.
Ooh.
Although gallons worth of authentic alcohol drinks were successfully smuggled over borders and into the United States the Prohibition years, the cheaper option was to purchase homemade beverages. Whether it was beer, wine, or hard liquor, all were made to varying degrees of success and seemingly to varying levels of damage to the drinker's health. Whereas home-brewed beer tended to simply taste foul, had a sludge-like appearance, homemade liquor could very well leave people paralyzed or even kill them. The U.S. government actually did little to curb fatalities from drinking homemade alcohol.
They actually
contributed to it. Yeah. It was often poisonous due to the high amounts of methanol used in the beverages. And the government was like, here.
Let this go into the...
Ridiculous. How many hundreds of people died?
There's a lot.
There was a lot that died from the homemade alcohol. Was it in New York that they had the huge... it was like a Jonestown massacre almost, for crying out loud. But not cult. They all drank it and died.
Yeah, I haven't heard about that. I think you're making something up.
I'm not making something up. If I am, it's not intentional. It's just because I'm senile. I turned 42 this year.
Because you're with the government?
Okay, next. Loss of tax revenue.
Oh, yeah.
Not only did the government lose millions of dollars in tax revenue from alcohol that would otherwise have been sold during Prohibition, but they were also hit a second time as a result of not being able to collect taxes from people no longer employed in jobs connected to alcohol production. On top of that, those people didn't have any money to spend, so they weren't spending any money. What they did spend was increasingly going to criminal organizations, dealing the U.S. government a third hit on revenue. Also, it was estimated to have cost $40 million to implement and police Prohibition. By the time the Great Depression hit, Prohibition was increasingly seen as a costly exercise on one hand and a missed opportunity for tax revenue on the other.
Yeah,
Who was president during Prohibition?
it started with Harding, I think.
Did it start with Harding? I'm looking at you, my history guru.
But no, they had tried getting they couldn't get Prohibition passed before because the tax issue. So the Anti-Saloon League were one of the big sponsors for the Federal Reserve Act, 1913. Wayne B. Wheeler.
Wheeler. That was another great movie. Ferris Wheeler's Day Off.
Bueller.
Next, the Prohibition story, Ferris Wheeler's Day Off. Okay, sorry.
Ironically, he died right before Prohibition went into effect.
Also, Prohibition ended up becoming a burden on the legal system. One of the main reasons Prohibition ultimately failed was the pressure it placed on law enforcement, the courts, and prisons. By the time it became apparent that people would not simply abstain from alcohol as largely expected, enforcement was at its breaking point. The court systems were backing up, prisons were getting full. As 1932 wore on and the Depression continued to tighten its grip around the financial throat of Americans, it became clear that ending Prohibition would kill not just two, but several birds with one stone. The court systems would be cleared and money freed for more serious cases like murder, which itself was up considerably due to Prohibition, and gangland killings over territory rights as far as alcohol distribution. Law enforcement would be freed of having to enforce the increasingly hated Prohibition, and most importantly, thousands of jobs would be restored as breweries and bars and establishments were able to open again. You got anything you want to say about that?
Damn Mexicans.
Oh, jeez. I mean, Jesus. Next, increased division.
See, she's racist. I'm Spanish, so I can say that.
I'm Spanish, too.
No, you're not.
Yes, I'm almost equal parts of Italian and Spanish.
You mean Italian?
I come from Italy.
I'm Italian.
Increased division as a result of World War I. Speaking of racism, this is what it's focusing on. As a result of World War I, there was an increasing anti-German sentiment throughout the U.S., which those in favor of Prohibition used to their advantage, most notably the Anti-Saloon League and various Christian movements. Not only did they state that grain should be used to make food in times of war as opposed to beer, they insinuated that since many of the brewers were German, they were trying to corrupt and weaken Americans with their alcoholic beverages. Enjoying a drink suddenly became a moral and even patriotic decision, as much as a social one.
And they did that in France, too, with absinthe, but it was the Jews.
They blamed it on the Jews?
Yeah, they said that it was a Jewish tool to make the country weak.
Oh, my God.
Lower birth rates and stuff like that.
The KKK also took advantage of Prohibition, stating that they were defenders of Prohibition and the need to enforce it. Although operating outside of the law, they torched many illegal saloons and considered bootleggers to be a section of society that had to be purged. They made toxic claims that drinking of alcohol and the problems it caused were because of black people and Irish and Italian immigrants. And the last unintended consequences of Prohibition, just a general distrust of authority. A long-lasting and underlying consequence of Prohibition was perhaps a general distrust of those in power, both of those who make decisions and those who enforce them. As the 1930s began, it became increasingly obvious to most that Prohibition was not a good idea, nor was it a success, and it backlash was on the government, of course. Like, you idiots, what the hell were you thinking? You've laid people off. You've
We should try it again.
cut tax money.
It'll work this time.
They just didn't do it right the first time.
It's pretty much what it always comes down to. Oh, something they forgot on that list.
Yeah?
Because of Prohibition, men and women were actually allowed to drink together.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
Men
I
and
forgot
women,
about
men
that.
and women did not drink. Well, women didn't drink in public at all. Mm-hmm. But so they would go to the speakeasies and they would
They'd all drink together.
drink together.
Yeah. Because men weren't drinking in public either.
Because
so-
finally they were equals.
Yes. That's kind of funny. So how much were babies up? Birthing had to be up just crazy amounts.
Possible.
Mm-hmm. Men and women drinking. We all know what that leads to. It's not It usually leads to babies. Or a VD.
Babies are the worst.
Well, that's it. That's all I got. You can go.
I just want to build this wall.
Just go. Oh, coming up. Let's see. Rock Ranger show, possibly. I don't know if Amanda's going to be in, but that's coming up next. And if there's a song you want to hear, email me, Stacy at urlradio.net. That's STACY at urlradio.net. Everybody have a great afternoon.